to our Friday Chit Chat. I think this is number 6 in our series. It's kind of hard to remember. I think I'm going to change my middle name to Zoom after this thing is all over. Seems like that's the life these days, but thank you again for attending. We have a great presentation for you today. Just wanted to remind you again, we do this every Friday at 10 o'clock. And next Friday, we're going to have Jana Gardner, who's a CAR attorney. Make sure you check in for that. She's a really good presenter, and she's going to talk about all things COVID-19, new forms, everything we need to do our business today. So make sure you check in next Friday for that. But as promised today, we have Brad Inman. Brad, in case you guys aren't aware, we have been at our association providing a member benefit to you called the Inman newsletter for, gosh, about 2 years now. And it is a $200, $199 value that I was paying for myself before then, because it is the preeminent source of real estate information for the industry, for this country. And Brad is the trusted source. So we decided as an association to provide that as a benefit. If you are not participating right now, you need to make sure and go to the website at nsdcr.com, go to the member benefits and click to access this, because you'll start getting the updates every day. It's really good stuff. So again, Brad is here today. This is gonna be a little bit more informal than we have been doing in the past. So just wanted to say 2 things. You're all going to be muted. We're expecting over 150 people today, so it's impossible to have everybody on the camera and live for questions. So make sure you use the chat box. If you're on your laptop, scroll your mouse down to the bottom. You'll see the chat there. You'll be able to ask questions. When you do that, I'll be able to relay those to Brad at the end of this presentation. If you're using an iPad, go up to the top right corner. There's the 3 dots where it says more. Make sure you click on that, and you'll get the chat box there. So that's how we're going to be communicating today, by using that. So Brad has graciously agreed to give us a presentation and then answer lots of questions. So we should be able to get to a lot of them. But again, with 150 people, probably not going to get to them all. So bear with us. So Brad, after that, I'm going to have you get started. If you don't mind, give us a little introduction, if you would.
Sure. I'm Brad Inman. It's great to be here. I want to thank you folks so much for your partnership with Inman and delivering Inman news to your members. It's really fantastic that you do that. And, I have a real love for San Diego. I live there. When did I live there? I lived there in the early 1980s and lived in OB. So I was a little south, but I just love the whole area, the whole county, and everything that goes on in that town. So it's really great to be in your living room. I took Zoom flight 2412, landed at the San Diego airport this morning. I was at, where was I this morning? I was in Memphis today. I was in Atlanta today, thanks to Zoom. I don't know if you know, the market cap of Zoom is greater than all of the top airlines in the world. It has greater value, and it's because these kind of technologies are being adopted furiously, and we can't fly, but a lot of things are going to change dramatically. But Chris, fire away with your questions, and I'll do everything I can to answer them. And I'm happy to talk about anything that you're seeing out there. I get an opportunity to talk to just about everybody, it seems like, in the real estate industry. And the beauty of all this is I've been talking to people in every corner of the country and the world and getting a lot and learning a lot. And then I've been doing a podcast with all the CEOs of the big companies and the tech companies, and that's really been insightful.
Great. Let me start with a couple things. First of all, I'm a big Zoom fan as well. I don't know how I got a tip last July to buy Zoom stock. So I was able to buy some stock when it was at 74. I think this morning it's at 150 something. So I'm loving this. Keep using Zoom, guys. Other thing is, this is being recorded. So I know that question comes up all the time. It's being recorded. James, our IT specialist, set up our own YouTube channel. If you just go to nsdcartv.com, you'll be able to see this chat along with all the others and some training stuff. So make sure that you check that out. So let's start with this one. Isolation for 6 weeks. I know you've been talking to people all around the country and the world, but how do you survive? What are you doing to keep sane?
Well, my wife Yaz had to fly back to the East Coast to get her mother to Morocco. And when she landed back in the US, we decided to stay apart. So I was alone for 6 weeks, and great experience in many ways to reflect on things, and stories come back even from childhood that I'd completely forgotten. But Chris, something pretty cool happened. One day I looked out the front window, and since this is San Diego, you all can probably relate to this. Guess what I saw? I saw a whole group of unicorns. Now, sure you understand, unicorns. Now, did you know unicorns can talk? My 4-year-old granddaughter, Quinny, said they could, so I believed her. And yes, they can talk. They're also immune from the virus. And so I chatted them up for 2 weeks every day. And about 10 o'clock in the morning, learned a lot. And the day I went to pick up Yaz, my wife, at LAX, they told me they weren't coming anymore. And I was like so sad. I said, you got to meet Yaz. Can I take a picture? They said, no, we got to leave. And you can't take a picture of a unicorn, which I didn't know. And so I don't have a picture to show you, share screen here. But they were leaving. Why? Because they had to go to the next house where someone was alone. Now, why do I tell that story? I tell that story, Chris, because unless you're not human, we've all probably touched every emotional, fiber in our body the last 2 months. Panic attacks, anger, belly laughs. I had more belly laughs the last 2 months than I had in my whole life. And why is that? It's because these circumstances, unpredicted, no one had a clue, put us in a situation unexpected, unplanned, uncertainty, full of anxiety. And so our humanness comes out in a really beautiful, interesting way. Tragic sometimes, difficult, loss of life. I mean, not to any way underestimate this, but that humanity comes out in really interesting ways. Let me use another example, not just unicorns. And this story for many will be more believable. I noticed about 3 weeks ago, there would be a brown paper bag in my front, right out my front door. And in it, the first time was a leg of lamb. Now, the only someone that knew me knew I loved to cook leg of lamb. And 5 days later, a whole chicken. And a few days later, cooked, warm barbecue ribs. No note, no business card, no text, no nothing. Did that come from Zoom.com? No. Did it come from Zillow? No. Did it come from NAR? No. Did it come from Realogy headquarters? No. Did it come from Realtor.com? No. It came from my local realtor, Byron. And that to me is a story of service, not sales. It's about being human at a time when we all need to be human. He's a great realtor. I've referred him many times, but I guarantee you, I'll refer him many, many more times. And that's what's happening during this period. And we can talk about market and conditions and data, and I'm up on all that stuff as best I can. But it's these stories of humanness, that are really, really quite amazing. We've been confined to our houses. So this idea of, confinement where everything is hyper local, more than any time in our lives. And then we spread just a little, and it's just our friends and family and neighbors and our local realtor, who's also very local. And I'm watching unbelievable examples of people being in service right now, reinforcing the very positive role the realtor plays. Oh, by the way, someone asked about my podcast, Chris.
Yes.
If you go to Inman.com and you go to the bottom, you'll see the Daily Dispatch. I've done 50 of these, and they've really been a lot of fun. I've learned so much and so revealing. Like, let's just take this, Chris. You and I met in passing, right?
Yes.
But we've never really talked. There's
No.
so many people in the real estate industry that everyone thinks I know intimately or know. Some I don't even know. In these 30-minute podcasts on Zoom, I've got to know people. It's not in passing. Meeting and knowing people in passing is pretty frivolous, but these connections we're making here. Hey, but Chris, I got a really important question for you. I just really worried about something. I think the whole country is.
Okay.
Del Mar opening in September.
Actually, I don't have the answer for that. One of my agents.
Burning Man got canceled, and that bummed me out. And Coachella got canceled. I hope that Del Mar's not canceled.
Well, that may be one of my agents is a horse owner. She is, the minute that opens, I don't see her for about 6 weeks. So if there's a scoop, I'll get that for you.
Please, I want to know. I go every year.
Okay. Hey, there's a lot of what you do with this technology and things. And one of the things that's a hot button for me as a CR director, I know we had a presentation last year about online notary. And I was stoked about it because from what I saw, it looked like it was far more secure than what we're doing now. I mean, I could have a bogus driver's license, walk in and have someone notarize a document and it's okay. But the process for online seems so much more
Safe.
safe. There you go. And I know at CR was kind of contentious, but there was vote to support it. And I know that there's legislation floating around now. What's the latest on that? And what's your opinion on the online notary?
Think about it, Chris. This is like a 400-year-old tradition. This is like we signed on rocks or slate. I mean, this is stupid.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I go through the airport and I'm authenticated with my eyes or my fingerprints, right? And we're still using notaries. I had a bank, I did a deal, a transaction, not a real estate, a business transaction. And my bank wanted to send a notary to my house. And I said, you guys, I just want to make sure you know that I've been in isolation, haven't had any interaction with any human beings at all. And you really are going to risk my life? You've been my bank for 30 years. Are you honestly going to do that? Oh, it's a requirement. It's a requirement. It's a requirement. Guess what? They waived it. That stupid shit is going away. And it's so good for real estate people, so good for realtors, so good for the customer. And that's just one sliver of a whole bunch of arcane, tired practices. I get criticized for using the word disruption. People think I'm talking about disrupting realtors. I'm not talking about getting rid of realtors. We need realtors now more than ever. But let's disrupt these habits. The Freddy Krueger of real estate. What is that? Mortgage. I just talked to Anthony Shea the other day, the head of Loan Depot. And Anthony said, Brad, I've deployed more technology in the last month than ever. We're gonna finally get rid of Freddy Krueger. Every realtor knows and every consumer knows that's a horrific experience. All of these habits that go way back are gonna be removed. And it's gonna be good for real estate. And you know, I'm always an idealist and I'm always hopeful, and I'll probably be wrong on some of them, but I think NAR is going to get its act together in notaries. It already has. And we're going to change federal law to circumvent local and state laws. It makes no sense. If I can be authenticated by my eyes, we don't need a notary. And you just said it so well. The other day I went to a grocery store and a woman was, not the other day, a couple months ago, she was writing a check. I went, wow, I haven't seen one of those in a while. Yeah. And she put that checkbook in her purse, and I went outside and watched her. Her purse was open, and the checkbook looked like it was almost ready to fall out. And I told her, you know, watch out. Now think about how safe and secure a check is. In the old days, they thought that was safer than wiring money, right? What's on your checkbook? On your checkbook is your account number, your routing number, your home address, your name, and sometimes your phone number. And just like a notary, these things are not any safer. It's just habit and tradition. And the beauty of this, it took COVID. You know, Rich Barton in his earning call yesterday was Zillow, and I talked to him afterwards. You look what's happening. There's more innovation going on in 2 months than has gone on in 3 years. More tech adoption in the last 2 months than in 10 years in real estate. I personally, because I get to roam around and do these Zoom meetings all over the country, I've learned more about real estate in 2 months than I knew that I learned in 10 years. Everything's accelerating, you know, if you're engaged, if you're present, and if you're adopting this stuff. So, you know, it's pretty exciting to think that, you know, and I feel sorry, I guess, for the notaries, but I don't think that's the end of the world.
You know, it's funny. At the age I am now, a few days ago can be anywhere from a week to 15 years. So I'm kind of the same way. Time loses all sense, especially when you're locked up like this.
And but I don't mean to be frivolous about the larger context of a pandemic that has infected millions of people, and you know the number of deaths is staggering because we can't. And I don't mean to be, you know, trivial about what we face here with an economic shutdown, but there's so many things that come out of pain. You know, I used to take kids on, I lived in San Francisco, and I'd go down the coast of California because being from Illinois, like many of us that migrated to California, I was just in love with the state and couldn't wait to go to San Diego and Santa Barbara and, you know, all those beautiful places. And one time we ran out of gas in Riverside, and the kids, I said, we're going to hitchhike. And they go, oh, Dad, you know, they were scared. And we hitchhiked, and the trucker picked us up, kind of a hick guy, but really cool guy. And I said, isn't this great? And my kid said, Dad, what's great about it? And I said, you will remember this story. You won't remember the sunset in San Diego. Does anyone remember a sunset from 10 years ago? No. My kids to this day remember hitchhiking. The beauty of this, it will pass, but the beauty is the memories. There are so many incredible stories that will be passed on for hundreds of years. And if you're present, if you're engaged, you're going to have stories to tell that are really amazing. And by the way, we're all going to have a report card, Chris, when this is all over. Those people that were present, that showed up, and you don't have to be heroic, you don't have to be a leader, but showed up and were present, are going to be graded well. And I understand some people, this is too much in the anxiety and the depression. I don't want to underestimate that. But for the rest of us, this is a report card. You know, be present, contribute, be in service, do whatever you can. And if you're a realtor, also realize, and I think you all know it, there are transactions every day in real estate. Someone knocked on my door the other day and wanted to rent my house. And I gave him a card of Brian, the realtor. There are transactions. You got to go get them. But if you're not present, if you don't wake up, get going, then it's not going to happen.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. We all know that we can't prevent bad things from happening. It's just, what are we going to do with it? I mean, are we going to turn tail and run? Are we going to embrace this? And out of this pain, there are some good things that can come if you are of that mindset. I think that trying to change online notaries or wet signatures for loans or anything like that, the process would take so long if there wasn't an impetus to move it along quickly. And this may be that, where it forces us to bring our industry and our processes in line where they should be. And that can be the blessing out of all of this.
Yeah, totally. And in fact, people are pointing out here that San Diego County is already accepting, you know, the remote online notary. I mean, all these things, and it's all accelerated. It's happening so fast. And, you know, it's really a great thing to see. And someone put in here e-signings for mortgages. You know, that's so critical here. I mean, we all do everything with DocuSign. You know, I bought companies worth a fortune, you know, that I've used all DocuSign. Why can't I do a mortgage for $80,000 with DocuSign? It's just ridiculous, you know. A lot of these things, though, you know what they came out of? They came out of other downturns when there was fraud and abuse, you know, like the famous thumbprint that came out of the S&L crisis. You know, it wasn't the everyday consumer that robbed people. It was, you know, Charlie Keating's of the world. And so, you know, unfortunately, a lot of this is put back on the consumer when things go wrong, when there's fraud and deceit and misrepresentation. And the everyday consumer, and these are allegedly barriers to fraud, but they really aren't. I mean, people that are fraudsters are going to find other ways, whether it's paper signature or whether it's, you know, a DocuSign. So I think, though, this has been a real cleansing, and the pandemic has forced the hand of what many of us have been talking about for so long. And it's a really great benefit out of all this.
So, you know, there's rumblings now about coming out of this, you know, phase 2 and phase 3 opening back up, and that's all great. You know, the business will never be the same, and that's a good thing. It'll never be the same. So what should an agent be focusing on right now going forward?
You know, I always say 3 things: your emotional IQ, your tech IQ, and your market IQ, and just run through them real quick. You know, never has empathy been more important. And so have a very high emotional IQ, spend more time listening and understanding your concerns of your customers, your neighbors, and others. The second one is your tech IQ. This is a great time to adopt new technology. This is because you have time. It's a great time to sift through the technology that doesn't work, because in the past, before this happened, you were so busy, you were making on-the-fly decisions. They were being, either someone was pushing down technology to you, or someone said, this is the platform you need to be on, or a salesman sold you a bill of goods. Now you have the time to sort through that and figure out, because you know better than anyone. The realtors in this that are sitting on this call know better than any of the experts at the top, better than any of the tech companies, what technology works. This is a time to sift through it. I'll tell you a story about technology. I decided to go through all the tech in my house and decide, do I really need an iPhone, an iPad, and a computer? Do I need Google Home? Do I need this? I do that. But the one I loved was, because I'm an old-fashioned guy from the Midwest, I like to use a broom and wash the dishes. It's just something I find gratifying. But I had this Roomba, and I'd never turned it on. And I turned it on, and it was loud and obnoxious and talking to me. And one day I had a fit of fury, and I took the Roomba and I threw it in the swimming pool. And my pool guy came and said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, that's a robotic vacuum cleaner." He didn't believe that there was such a thing. And he asked him if he could have it. And I said, "Sure, you can have it." But my point of that story is now's the time to throw away the crap you don't need and adopt the stuff that you know really works. And we'll all come out stronger because of it.
You know, I think that's a great point. It just seemed like the last couple of years, there's, you know, a new shiny penny everywhere you turn, and people were hopping from one to another and trying. It seemed like you're always getting ready to get ready, as opposed to finding a few things that work for you well and do those things well. You can't do it all.
That is so true.
So,
By the
questions
way,
coming
someone
in.
asked how you sign up for Inman News. You just go to your website and you'll see it there. You know, this is a great offering by your association, like they do so many good things. Someone also asked here about self-showings. Chris, I think that this is one thing that also take hold,
Yeah.
and we shouldn't be fearful of it. It doesn't work in every circumstance, but already we're seeing evidence of it. There is this thesis that behavioral changes that last 60 days to 90 days become permanent. So if self-showings work in the minds of the consumer, who I think will drive all of this, and we're finding so many examples of consumers wanting this stuff and adopting it now. They didn't know it was out there because a lot of them were made available to them. And if consumers like self-showings, whether it be the sell side or the buy side, guess what? It's going to happen. And by the way, we can make it safe. If we can get people through Homeland Security without bringing a gun, we can authenticate people to make sure it's safe. And a lot of these tech companies are working on these ways of doing it. So self-showing, I think a lot of these things that we've talked about over the years are starting to happen. Someone also asked about DRE changes, and they still require wet signatures. Well, you know, let's tell that governor, he seems pretty responsive. Let's get that guy on it, you know. I mean, I feel sorry for the CAR lobbyists. Can you imagine trying to influence the Sacramento legislature? I used to write about the California legislature. If you get this, back in the 80s for the LA Times and 90s, and that's when I discovered there is no such thing as public policy. There's only politics.
Yes.
But God loves CAR. They do a great job. I mean, as you do with local stuff, I think you have the best state trade group in the whole country. I love Joel. I love that whole gang. They're the best.
You know, I happen to be a CR director, and we just had our meetings this last week on Zoom because we weren't up in Sacramento. But there is a realization that things have changed. I mean, we used to be one of the largest, if not the largest, influencer of politics in the state. And with the demographics now, the political makeup of the state legislature, it's tough. Those days are probably gone. And so we have to figure out other ways to influence. And one of the things that we're working on is this tax portability, which would be a terrific thing for our industry. You know, over 55, be able to move anywhere you want in the state as multiple times, take your tax base. It'll create inventory that we haven't had, right? This whole idea of building more homes and high density, high rise stuff is just not the answer.
Totally right. It's going to change radically here. I couldn't agree more. Hey, real quick, someone asked me, I guess I didn't fit it in. Emotional IQ, tech IQ, and the last one is market IQ. And I always say to people, when I bought in West Hollywood, Yaz and I found a realtor on the street, if you can imagine, a woman that saw us looking at an open house sign. And she was just a really sweetheart. She was dressed in white. She had blonde hair. She had perfect white teeth. She had a perfect white dog. She had a perfect white little Mercedes. And she was married to a plastic surgeon. And that was her only qualification to be a realtor. And she was not very good. And so we said bye-bye in the kindest way. And we found Steve. And Steve knew 90046 like the back of his hand. I always joke with Steve, you should have your zip code tattooed to your forehead or your butt, because you know it like you knew every house, every sale, every market trend, every nuance, everything. And now more than ever, in an uncertain market, Chris, now more than ever, it's so important that we use this time to become really, really savvy with data on what exactly is going on in our market. So Sean, the third one is your market IQ. We need realtors more than ever in any kind of shifting and changing market. We want to know We need to know. And the only people that know are realtors. You can get his estimate, you can get data here, there, everywhere, but only the realtor puts all of that data together. And if they're really knowledgeable about, their backyard and their zip code or their farm, then their value accelerates immensely. And now's the time to do it. Learn about, you may think you know everything about the market, but learn and dig deeper. And here's the beauty of the MLS. The MLS has a ton of data, and we got to get all that data out by all these associations. I did an interview with a broker in New Orleans, and she was talking about how the association or the MLS hesitated getting the data to their realtors, and the realtors needed the data. In this case, specifically, they needed to apply for some of the government assistance and help. And the MLS kind of dragged its feet. And it's like, no dragging of feet now, gang. We need to all be every single day. And this is our absolute mission at Inman News. Every single morning we wake up, we're dedicated to helping our readers, which are realtors, navigate what could be a tough summer. We need to turn the thing upside down, where the top of the pyramid is serving the base of the industry, which is the everyday working realtor, and be obsessed on being responsive, credible, great information. And again, that's why I love CAR. They have been honest and truthful, data-driven, some of it not great information to hear, but so important. And that's got to be everyone's passion. I think most people are doing it, by the way. I mean, like what you've been doing here with your Friday meetings and many, many other things. But that's got to be our passion to help people get through this.
So I couldn't agree more with all of that. So the four-letter word in the industry for a lot of the agents in fear is the iBuyer. The Open Door and Zillow, and I know they backed off a little bit now because of what's going on. They certainly will be back. So tell us what you think about that.
Well, first of all, I don't understand the fear. It's a buyer, and realtors put buyers and sellers together. And most of these iBuyers need realtors. They need them more than anybody. They thought maybe initially they didn't, but they do. And they're going to need them even more. And they're going to need them now more. And consumers are going to lean on realtors now more because of the things we just talked about. That Byron's in my neighborhood. Zillow isn't, no person, no human being was there to help me, right? And so this is a really unbelievable time for the iBuyers to jump back in, and they're going to get ready. They're already, Open Door opened its doors. OfferPad said everywhere again. And now Zillow yesterday, Rich Barton on his earnings call said that 2 weeks we're back in. It's crucial to them being back in the business. And the only danger here, and this is again, the role of the realtor. Wall Street got us into the subprime mess, and then they made a ton of money, and then they cleaned up by buying foreclosures. And so Wall Street and Main Street have always had a little bit of a rub. And we need Wall Street, but let's, so now who's going to power this? Well, the money behind Zillow on iBuying, the money behind OfferPad and Open Door, and all of them is private equity. And they want to get deals in the market. And realtors have to be there to protect the customer and protect the consumer. Let's hope forbearance doesn't turn to foreclosure. But if it does, Wall Street always jumps in. We saw it last time. But this now more than ever, realtors are needed. And right before Connect in January, I interviewed 30 realtors that were using iBuying as a tool. They were fully wedged into the system, and they were making money. Different terms, different ways, not the classic way of buying and selling a house, but there's opportunities there. But don't put your head in the sand. They're going to be back. It's not the end of the world. They are a buyer. You're the person that puts buyers and sellers together. Figure out a way to work with them, and you'll be fine. And many people in San Diego are doing this already, and more of it will happen. And so yeah, it's back. It's not going away. People, God, I couldn't believe it during the middle of the pandemic. Zillow's going to go bankrupt, or Compass is going to go bankrupt, or Open Door is going to go bankrupt, and they're all going to go away, and we're going to go back to the beautiful 1950s. Well, that didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. Zillow announced yesterday they have $2.6 billion in cash and cash equivalents. I don't think they're going to go away. And but they're part of the industry, and iBuyers are part of the industry. And one thing that I've seen over the years, all the innovation, all the changes, the one group that always survive is the individual realtors. They just outwork everybody. I always said, why do they always last? They just outwork the innovators. They're constantly out there and present and before the consumer. And when all these companies got into this, they realized quite quickly, whatever dream Zillow may have had in the beginning, they learned their lesson really quick. One, the only way they're going to make money is if they did, worked with realtors. And that's what, Rich Bard talked about yesterday. He has no intention of running away from the relationship he has with his premier agents.
So I'm not sure that this is the right time for the discussion, but it just seems like you mentioned forbearance, and there's going to be some issues next year because you have a lot of people right now, unfortunately, getting bad information that are hearing forbearance, and they're being told forbearance. What they hear is forgiveness in both the loan payments and the rental side, and I think that when the information comes out next year and they realize, gee, although it couldn't legally affect my credit, when that lender goes to look at my credit report and sees I didn't make a payment for 4 months there, now what? I mean, what do you?
Well,
you have any insight into that?
What we're doing, it's scary, and we're taking our lead from our government and our country and our leaders, Republican and Democrat. They all agree on this, right? Defer, defer, defer.
Yeah.
I mean, when you pump
Yeah.
trillions and trillions of dollars into an economy, you're printing trillions and trillions of dollars. Historically, what that's meant in most countries is inflation, inflation, inflation. I don't know. We're talking about deflation. I don't want to predict that. And we did it in World War II and we came out okay, right? So, and we had to do something. So I'm not disparaging, but that defer now is what people are doing, right? We're deferring laying off people, maybe some companies, but not a lot. We're deferring, our credit card payments, or we're deferring our house payment. And no one's saying forgiveness, Chris. You just nailed it. And so when you take an action to defer something, the idea that you won't be accountable for it is probably not something that you should guide your direction, because it is going to come back to haunt you potentially. And a lot of these things haven't been answered and we don't really know yet the outcome. But I do think this deferring, which we needed to do, has consequences, like everything. And we're going to have to own up to it at some point. And, that's my only advice. If you're doing it personally as a realtor with your own mortgage payment or credit cards, or if you have your customers doing it, just think through it really carefully, because there may be consequences. But
yeah, I think every agent needs to make sure that their clients understand that. And if they have a question, talk to their lender, because their lenders will be able to straighten them out. Because it seems like this whole deferring thing, it's all about reelection. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. It's I'm going to kick the can down the road so I get reelected, and we'll just keep pushing it down the road. And we're in for a rude awakening. I mean, there's no way out of that. Whether if you can't make your payment now and you go 4 months without making it, you're going to make 5 payments at once.
Yeah.
Whether rent or that, it's going to create a problem. So I think education is important. One of the things that you talked about, know your market right now. We need to know what's going on so we can help our clients navigate through this as well, because they're getting so much bad information. And
so true.
Okay, guys, any other questions? We got Brad. This is a rare opportunity. So if we don't see any more questions coming up in here, if you have questions, put them in the chat box, please.
By the way, I can talk. One thing that can be fun to do here, Chris, is just say a name, like NAR, Zillow, Redfin, Compass. You can just go through the list, anything you want, and I'll give you a quick rapid fire response. I've done this in the past and it tends to generate some interest. Anyway, but whatever.
Okay. Yeah, we'll jump to that. One other question. I've been doing a lot of talking. I'm on the board of CRMLS as well. So the whole clear cooperation policy and how that's being implemented as of a couple of days ago. Your thoughts on what NAR did last November on the clear cooperation policy?
I think it was really a smart move by NAR, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think most of the organizations that are affected by it are being responsible. And those that aren't, I think, the great thing about transparency, it exposes the bad actors. And I don't mean bad like evil, right? But I just think, that's something that was a good policy, and I think it's a smart policy. But you tell me. I mean, I'm the observer. You all are right in the middle of it. Did it make sense for the industry? Was that your view, Chris?
It did. The MLS works. What separates us from other countries is we have this cooperation. We have the ability for an independent agent who doesn't have a listing to be able to access an MLS, a shared database, and be able to sell other brokers' property and get paid for that. If you didn't have that, what would it do to customers? Number one, where would they have to go? How many sites would they have to go to try and find information? And then as agent, if you didn't have your own listing, where are you getting buyers from? So
Exactly.
I think that the whole idea of the MLS and NAR's, this is my personal opinion, NAR's decision was a good one to try and protect what makes us work as an industry. Trying to come up with a policy that
You said it
benefits everyone or works for everyone is impossible, but I think it's pretty darn good.
totally. Hey, we got a question here about consolidation. The industry will consolidate. It always happens. It already started to happen in real estate. If you look at Compass' success, it was a two-way street, right? Compass had a ton of money and was buying up companies, and a ton of companies had low margins and needed to sell anyway, and they were faced with disruption. You see this in telecom. People are cutting the cable, right? And what's happening? There's a consolidation. Consolidation started. Teams, I think teams are an example of consolidation in real estate. Why do I say that? Because individual realtors figured out with all the disruption, all the new stuff, all the technology, that they were better off as a team. M&A always comes from, in consolidation, from either disruption or economic downturn. And we have both going on in the industry. And so there's just going to be more and more and more of that. I think some big cats are going to probably fall here, just like we're seeing in the business world. I don't know who yet. So that's my take on that. On Compass, think about it. It was just a replay of the Send It playbook from the middle 90s when Henry Silverman took Send It, which became Realogy, and bought up 25% market share of the real estate services business. That's what Compass did. And they had a lot of capital, just like Henry Silverman did. And they paid a lot of money. You go back to, I think that Send It paid like $800 million back in the day for Coldwell Banker. So Send It, Compass wasn't any bigger or crazy than Send It and Realogy ever were. But then when you also look at Realogy, then they turned around and sold it, piled that company with $3.5 billion worth of debt and hampered the company. So Compass will be here to stay if they got enough money in the bank account. And I don't think any of us know how much they have. And all the criticism and back and forth. I hear a lot of happy agents that are with them. I hear a lot of people on the outside that think they're terrible. But, every company gets a bad rap different times. So are they God's savior? No. Are they, going to change and kill the whole industry? No. This industry constantly has new players, new technologies, new innovators coming and going. And if they survive, they'll stick to the main concept. And that is emphasize helping the local realtor, and you'll probably succeed as a company.
So one of the questions I think is really interesting, what innovation made you really perk up? What's the thing that you've seen in the last year that's really made you perk up, that thought, wow, that's evolution right there?
Yeah, everything related to the transaction that's happened. Pete Flint said it well the other day when I interviewed him. He's a kid that, started Truly and sold it for $3.5 billion. He started learning about real estate as a student at Stanford, and he read something about an Inman conference, and he called me up and said, hey, I'm a student at Stanford. I can't afford to come. Can I volunteer? And I said, yeah, you can check security badges as they come into the hall. So that's how Pete Flint learned his first lesson in real estate, is attending Connect. And he went on to sell Truly for, like I said, $3.5 billion. But he and I talked to him the other day, and he said, and I thought it was really a simple explanation. The first phase of the internet, technology, innovation, and real estate was getting information to the consumers. All the work we all did to get listings on the internet, and then put images and pictures and prices. People don't remember that are new, or don't know that, the first rendition was to put homes up and not put the prices, just nonsense. And now what we made is real estate information transparent, which created a robust market and a better real estate market. Pete said phase two is all about the transaction. It's all about this back end stuff, some of which we just went through, like Notary, on and on and on, self-showings, all this stuff. That's where billions of investor capital is going into, partially to help and enable Wall Street to buy more houses, but partially because whether it's escrow or title or mortgage, or all of these elements are coming together on the back end. So the same transparency we got on the front end, we're going to see in the back end, and we're going to see a more efficient way to see a house. You used to have to call a realtor, they go through the MLS book, couldn't show it to you. That wasn't a very efficient way, and it wasn't an open, vital market. And then we had the internet, and people could see houses whenever they wanted, day or night, and that created more home sales. And if we smooth out the transaction in the back end, we're going to have more home sales. And none of that precludes the role of the realtor. So that's the biggest change. And iBuyers did a lot of that, and Redfin did a lot of that. And there's some, Zillow's doing a lot of that, and local brokers are doing a lot of it. There's a lot of savvy, smart, agile, indie, boutique, and franchise brokers who are totally with it here. A whole generation of new broker owners became part of the Inman community after the Great Recession because they got into the business. They looked around and said, they took technology for granted. They were, agile and innovative, and they just glommed onto our community. They're a big part of our community because of that. So, that's where a lot of the innovation is coming to as well.
So another question about DRE licensing and just my opinion, I'm a big believer that we shoot ourselves in the foot as an industry because we make it so easy to get a license, and the licensing process teaches you nothing about this business, that we're doing ourselves a disservice. And I think that we're going to see, I don't see DRE ever cutting their own funding source, by applications, but what would you like to see DRE do, or an industry, to self-regulate, to make it more difficult to get in and require more professionalism?
Yeah, I go back and forth, and I don't have any more firm belief. I think I was the first one that wrote 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that it's easier to get a beautician license than to become a realtor. And I think it was true, actually. The requirements were stiffer. And maybe that's because they have scissors and so they're dangerous. The point in that is, wow, that's pretty loosey-goosey. And it's always been loosey-goosey. But, I was interviewing that Ryan Serhant, that realtor, wonderful young man from New York who's on a $1 million lister. I'm not a big fan of that show, but I'm a huge fan of his. He's really a good agent. He came into it during the last downturn. And why? Because he couldn't get a job as an actor, and he was kind of stuck. And he became a realtor, and a really good realtor. You go back to the 60s, and women whose husbands left them destitute, and left them with big credit card obligations, even though, and no income and no revenue. And thank God for the low barriers to entry to becoming a realtor. And some of the best real estate people in the country came out of that period. And then you look at, the 2010, 2011, 2012 downturn. You're unemployed. People became realtors. The barriers to entry were low, and some great real estate people. A whole new generation got into it. And you look now, and Ryan told me this the other day. I said, do you think there'll be fewer realtors because of COVID? And he said, Brad, just the opposite. I've got all my Wall Street friends are being laid off, and they're finally saying, God, you've done well in real estate. Maybe I'll become a realtor. And so we got mega unemployment now, Chris. And guess what people do when they get unemployed? They become realtors. Not all of them, but many of them. And should we close the doors to them? I just go back and forth. I sometimes think, oh, let's raise the bar. But, whenever the government gets too involved in anything, they probably will mess it up. Should they enforce and police the rules they have maybe better? Yes. As a journalist in California all those years writing about California real estate, I talk to the DRE all the time, and I was always impressed. They were dedicated public servants that tried really hard, but it was a beast to police. So I used to be pretty strong, had strong feelings in this, but I've kind of changed I don't think the government's going to save us from the bad actors. I don't think the government's going to save us from realtors that aren't trained. I don't think the government's going to save us from fraud. I think it's the industry itself, but God love it that there's low barriers to entry and when there's high unemployment and people can get into the industry. I think it may go the other way. Watch out.
Interesting.
But then I just read today, NAR said we're going to have, I think NAR said it, we're going to have a shrinking number of members. So I don't have the answer. I see all the different angles, and I am just an observer. And as an observer, it's not really crystal clear to me which way this might go.
Okay. Well, great. I don't see other questions coming in. If anything you want to just end up with, Brad. And again, guys, this is being recorded, so you'll have access to it. And we do offer Brad's subscription free to members. If you have a question, go to the NSCCR website, chit chat. They'll be able to get you set up. It's a $200 value. It's really more than that. That's what he charges. But if you want to know anything about what's going on, you get daily updates, you get daily articles, you have access to their Connect online. It's the preeminent source of real estate information in the country. So make sure you take advantage of what we have.
Hey, and Chris, there is an offer because you're all members there and you get a really killer deal. We have our Connect Now conference coming up, and people say, when? And I say June 2nd to June 4th, and they go, where? And I go, in your living room. So move some chairs around, get some coffee. I like half and half. I'm going to bring the CEOs of every major company in the country. I'm going to bring you a bunch of hardworking realtors that are figuring out with tactical advice of how to get through the next few months. We're going to bring the best and brightest from technology. I mean, an amazing group of people. And you don't have to fly to Vegas. You don't have to fly to New York. You don't have to spend $1,500 because you're a member, thanks to NSDCAR. You can get into our Connect conference for $50. For 25 years, you've been coming to us. Now we're coming to you. And we're really, really excited. And it's going to be killer. The production value and the learning and the takeaways and the networking and the parties afterwards virtually, are really going to be fun. So it's $49, I think, because of your association and its membership offer. But moving on from that, I just want to leave you something. I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for 30 years, and every summer, and I think people in San Diego know this, the fog, I mean, what do you call it in San Diego? The overhang, but the fog moves into San Francisco. And that's why many people over the years have said the coldest winter I ever spent was in San Francisco. And for some reason, just the other day, I was sitting and thinking about that fog and how it comes in and out, right? And then I searched on the internet and I found a poem that I remembered that I always loved. So if you don't mind, it's just one sentence. This will take 15 seconds to wrap it up. But it's a one-line poem from Carl Sandburg. And then I wrote what I was feeling about it after I read it, because I'm a writer. The poet Carl Sandburg wrote, "The fog comes in on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. Almost every summer day, the fog comes," this is what I wrote, "almost every summer day, the fog comes through the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And for those of us living there, it defines everything, our work, our play, our mood, and our daily decision. Then suddenly in the fall, it disappears." And here's what I wrote finally. "As we just begin to see through the fog of the COVID-19, we realize this too has an end. Not knowing when is daunting, and not yet understanding the full consequences is really scary. But there is solace in realizing the raging 2020 COVID-19, not its memories, will come to a close. Time heals everything, gang. But just remember, this is your report card. Be present. Be present for your family, your friends, your customers. This is a really, really good time to take advantage of. We gave the earth a break for a couple months, and we gave you all a break in an odd sort of way. And I'm really optimistic. This is a great industry. It's always been a cooperation from the first example of broker cooperation, which started in San Diego at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. And this is an industry that knows how to cooperate. And never has that been more important. But keep that positive attitude. You don't have to be somber. You don't have to be gloomy. This is the time to really pick it up. I love San Diego too, and I can't wait to come to Del Mar. If not this year, next year. Promise, Chris?
You promise, absolutely. You're on. All right. Again, thank you so much for taking the time, Brad. We really appreciate you taking it for us and what you do for the industry. It's great to be able to go to one source and get everything we need. So thank you again.
Guys, you're my customers. You're my readers. Adios.
Thank you. Hey, and guys, just remember next week, tune in for Jana Gardner. She is a CAR attorney. We're going to have a legal update. Everything that you need to know about COVID, the PED forms, the CVAs, all that stuff. She's going to talk about it, and we're looking forward to seeing you then. So until then, stay healthy, stay safe, be well. Take care.